Hello and welcome to Anybody and Everybody. This is the Seeds of Synergy podcast, and I am your host, Patrick. In today's conversation, I'll be joined by Sebastian, a longtime friend of mine from Brisbane, Australia. And in this conversation, we explore Seb's unique path in the entrepreneurial world, as well as some of his key learnings and takeaways, the importance of a diverse education, mentors, lived experience, as well as your traditional theoretical knowledge. I hope there's some takeaways and valuable insights that you can gain from this conversation, or seeds that are planted in your garden as a result. Thank you and enjoy. Maybe we start with just giving the audience a bit of an understanding, an idea of who you are and what you're about and what you're doing with yourself.
Definitely. So my name's Sebastian, obviously. My sort of background is a little bit different to, I guess, the normal journey of growing up in a household of business owners, and then having many changes throughout that whole journey, which we'll probably dive into today. And growing up in, going to a very privileged school and having that sort of journey in there. And then from there, not necessarily taking the normal route of going to university, getting a degree and that sort of things. I took my own journey. That's come with a lot of experiences and and differences that everyone may not have the same perspective, I guess, that I have. So, and also in all this, it's myself, I believe I'm quite a empathetic and very in tune with my own thoughts, my own emotions, and I have the ability to be able to feel deeply, I guess is probably the best way to explain it. Which in a way I think is a bit of a superpower. A lot of people think that could be a negative for them to be able to feel, and a lot of people may want to suppress that in themselves. But to be honest with you, it is a superpower in itself to be able to feel very deeply. And if we're talking about life here, really, I think at the end of the day, if I can lay in my deathbed, no matter where that might be, no matter when that might be, if I can lay in that bed and go, I've had pretty much every experience you can have in life, I reckon that's a good testament of what a life is, right? Yeah.
And like you said, it's a broad spectrum that as you grow and progress through the years will definitely come with its own sets of challenges and opportunities, joys and sadnesses.
Yeah.
But that was a really good introduction, and
appreciate it, Paddy.
I did want to say actually a big reason why I thought you'd be a really good guest to have on would be that your journey hasn't been sort of the traditional approach. Would you be able to speak a bit more to what your journey has looked like?
Yeah, as a young man, or as just throughout everything.
We'll start professionally. So going to a private high school, having that sort of mindset that once you finish your high school education, you progress to tertiary education either through TAFE or vocational pathways or through university. And talk me through that experience.
So, I mean, in school, I was always a bit of I was very studious in my studies, and I was a very quick learner, still am. And so whenever I really dived into something, I could do it very deeply. But if I was doing something that I didn't believe in or just wasn't motivated or driven by, such as English or mathematics, I would be very 50% on it, right? Yeah. And throughout school, I actually wanted to be a physio. I love sport. I wanted to play sport for the rest of my life, play rugby union. And through that whole journey was more of that was a dream of mine since I was a young kid to play rugby union professionally, play for the Reds, play for the Wallabies, and if anyone's seen me play rugby, you'd go, "Oh, that's a strange dream to have." I think I was pretty good in my prime. No. But as a kid growing up, these are very quite common dreams that we've all had, and I think when my later years in school, I wanted to be able to continue that, and so I studied biology. Did quite well at biology, was very passionate about it, and really actually the thing that deterred me from going down more of that path was actually we did a school trip for the biology class in grade 12, and we went to the QMIR, the Queensland Research facilities in, where is it, near the RNA showgrounds, something like that. Yeah. And we went through the whole facilities, met all the scientists, met all the researchers that were there working, and we were talking to them. They had been studying or theorizing one thing for their whole career, either sitting behind a computer researching or actually, working with the technology and advancing the technology. But for me, I was like, fuck, that seems... I just didn't want to do that. I wanted to be able to do something new every day, I guess. And to be honest with you, you can still be in that line of work and still do that. But for me, it just didn't feel right. I guess that probably makes more sense. And so in grade 12, then I got really stuck into my creative side, which was more the graphic design side of things. I started up a clothing brand when I was in grade 12 and followed that through outside of school. But I felt very passionate about my creative abilities. So I went to university for a semester, studied business and creative industries. I had always had a passion around business as well because of my upbringing and also the people I looked up to. And so I decided to follow that path in university. Did marketing, economics, and business, and then in creative industries. Can't even remember what I did. And I quickly learned that from literally the transition between grade 12 to outside of school, one of the things I'm most passionate about is continual learning, continual self-growth. And so literally that is all I did. I was on the computer a lot, taking different courses, just researching and doing things that I was very passionate about. And a lot of that was around the creative industry side of things, developing my own skills in branding, graphic design, marketing, that side of things. So, and what I found was when I got to university was, and no offense to anyone, but a lot of that I'd already learnt just in my own abilities to research a lot of things, especially in the creative industry side of things, right? And what I found was it was that creative side of what I was already going through, what I was already experiencing, the university side of things, in a way was, for me, didn't feel very aligned, because it was more of was trying to control that creativity, which I don't necessarily see as a bad thing, but it just didn't feel aligned to me. So I decided to choose different. After a semester, I dropped out, and to my parents, surprise.
Can I quickly speak to that? So I think the whole purpose of university and higher level education is to give you the skills and exposure to a broad range of knowledge that are applicable across your specific industry that you're going in. And business is such a multifaceted industry to start to dive deep into. So
it is.
I think maybe for people that might be a bit disheartened by the structure of university, I think the intentions are to give you as much exposure and as much information as possible, so you can make an informed decision on where you want to go with that degree and that qualification. But if you already know what that is, then there's definitely some value in just pursuing your natural curiosity as well.
Totally. The model of universities, right? The model of schools and educational places is the ease of access to information, really. Like when you have a look at what is the true service that they're providing, it is that accessibility to a lot of skills and information and education to better produce an outcome for whatever career you want to go, or whatever need that you want to satisfy, I guess. And so the structure of university as well, I think is brilliant, especially for young people, right? The transition from a school, very structured, you have your timetable every single day, you have places that you need to be, you have people holding your hand, especially if you went to a private school. Anyone who would have, gone from a private school into university, the transition makes it a little bit easier because you have still a little bit of structure with university, right? Still, it is a very tough transition, but university is a great place to be able to provide that structure to also continue that learning, to keep yourself accountable and disciplined in your studies and that sort of things, which I think is brilliant. But also do know that there are other places to seek information. And so my path around that, because, my parents needed me to have a plan to, I couldn't just drop out without, not doing anything, which I was very open to. So Dad connected me to one of my first mentors after university, which was Steve Newman. And he was actually in the business space. And what I did with him was as just a way to learn from his experience in business, sales and marketing, was I would just go to his house. I think it was about 3 times a week. And I would actually just learn and ask him questions the whole time, right? So this is where a lot of my education came from, was actually from lived experience, right? Not just from the people out after university, but also from growing up in a business household as well. Dad, as being one of my other mentors as well, and also my mum, I also learned a lot from them in that side of things. So, like I said, university is a great place to have instant access to lots of knowledge if you can afford it. And luckily in Australia we have the HECS initiative here. Not every country has that, but that's really, and also the network, right? You get to connect with younger people, or even if you're a mature student, you still get to be able to connect with like-minded people, right? It's very cool in that aspect that you can actually really, one of the biggest values of it is building a network, right? Which isn't necessarily something, you may drink a few beers on the weekend with potential business partners, colleagues, whoever it might be in the long-term future, because it's all about building those relationships at the start, which university creates a great place to be able to create those relationships and nurture those relationships, really, in my eyes.
I agree. I think for my journey, university was definitely a really good source of education. But first and foremost, I think it was the networking that made it such a crucial time in my life. Meeting new people, expanding my horizons, learning about different parts of the world and other perspectives on life, which is really cool. You mentioned just before networking and the importance of being able to foster and nurture relationships. Can you talk about, after you'd engaged with your mentor and started this new journey,
Definitely,
how networking and the ability to build relationships has helped you in your path?
Well, from Steve, from working with Steve, he, and this is the power of not just building relationships, but also the power of networking is from my experience of me working with him. He then continued introducing me to other people, right? And 2 of those people that he introduced to me are now my business partners today, funny enough. So he introduced me to Telia and Andrea, and when I went to do the same thing. I went to work in their office. Telia was in branding, Andrea was in business and marketing. And it's funny how, as soon as you become very aligned and clear on what you do want, it's funny how things kind of tend to fall into place. Around the not just alignment of the path that you want to be going down, but also the alignment of the values of the people that you want to attract in your life, the values that you hold dear to yourself, right? So the networking side of things, the building relationships is very important, but also, who are you, in these conversations? It is really all around who do you want to be in these conversations, in everything that you do and embody in life. It all comes down to your being, right? And this is the real key point of what people connect to, because you could do a lot of networking, you could have a lot of conversations, but if you're not aligned or not clear on or confused around the values that you really hold dear to yourself, that connection that you build with other people isn't going to be as deep as you may want it to be. And really, the power of networking is building those deep connections and relationships with human beings, right? Now, in the business space, yes, it's also about finding good referral partners, strategic partners, and that side of things. But at the end of the day, we're emotional beings that justify our decisions through logic, right? So if you're connecting with someone on a logical scale, it makes sense to be able to work with someone else because there may be some synergy there. Great, but if there is no emotional connection between the two, then it's very surface level, right? And that's just based off what I sort of value for myself. It's really, I think, one of the things that I strive to create in my own life is those deep connections. Because yes, money is great, but to be honest with you, what's more valuable to me is those relationships, not just with other people, but the relationship with myself first and foremost, right? Yeah. Because everything from that point on is an extension or an amplification of who you are, really. When you talk about law of attraction, that side of things, it really comes from what you believe about yourself, what you know about yourself. And I've been through my own journey in that side of things. So that's really the point of difference, I guess, when I come in, and what I value, I guess, is that internal knowing and self-belief first and foremost, which has been a journey, still going.
Just before I went overseas on my travels, you said something that really sort of stuck with me, and I played it over in my head a few times, talking about tracing back to who we really are, and you mentioned unconditional love and curiosity. Could you expand on that a little bit more? Tell the tale?
Yeah, definitely. When we were born, we don't really remember much, but if you've ever held a newborn baby, and this is what, the stories that my mum and dad have told me, about when you really hold the baby for the first time, right? In the hospital, you feel something completely new. One of that might be being shit scared, first and foremost. But the second one is you feel unconditional love, right? The baby that is looking up to you as you're holding it, fresh, right? It is new to the world. Well, that can be debatable, but new to the world, they're just looking up to you without any judgment. They're not looking up to you going, who the fuck is this guy? I hope he has his shit together. No, they're not judging, they're not thinking, they're just being, right? And what I believe to be that being is just pure unconditional love. They can cry, they can laugh, they can giggle, they can smile, they can frown, they can defecate in their nappies, right? Without any judgment. And I believe that is the true definition of the difference between love and fear, is the absence of judgment, right? As soon as you start to judge, and judgment isn't a bad thing. That's something that I want to be very clear on, because we judge when we cross a road. We look left, we look right to see if there's a car coming to keep ourselves alive, right? These are very core necessary things that just happen instinctively to keep ourselves alive, right? That's the sense of homeostasis. Everything's working in your body to keep you alive. Yeah. That's a very natural part. What I mean by judgment is really that self-criticism, that self-doubt, that self-hate that you feel that is coming from something that you cannot control, right? And really, and this is what you tend to see a lot in our world, is a lot of people complaining, lack of responsibility. People are wanting to take in their lives, and really it's all coming from a place of fear and judgment. And really what I believe is if we can all, and we're human beings, and like I said, there's nothing wrong with judging, but to be aware of when those judgmental thoughts do come in, and to ask yourself, is this real, right? Or is this just a mirror to myself? Which is where really, when you hold up that mirror to a lot of people, this is where you can find a lot of confrontation happen, right? It is the matter of pointing a finger, right? I'm pointing one finger at you, but I'm pointing 3 others back at me, right? Because it is just a mirror. And it's a matter of, really, it's just a reflection of what you think about yourself, what you feel about yourself. So I believe that we are unconditional love, right? We were born as unconditional love, and that has never left us. Now, our life experiences and the development of our brain as well has had a big part of, being able to experience more than just unconditional love, right? Because, like I was telling you before, I believe that if I can feel every single human emotion in life and have those different experiences, then how do I know what unconditional love actually feels like without the fear and without the judgment, right? That contrast is what gives us the understanding of what that actually is, right? Without joy, you can't have fear or unhappiness, right? And this is where this positivity mindset comes into play. Trying to be happy all the time. Fuck being happy all the time. That sounds, because if you were just happy all the time, then you wouldn't value what happiness actually feels like. And if you weren't sad, then you wouldn't know either, right? You wouldn't know the contrast. You wouldn't be able to really be grateful for it. And it is really around the gratitude of these different emotions, of these different thoughts, of the different experiences. That is really the key to releasing that judgment in yourself, and the key to reconnecting to that unconditional love is finding gratitude in everything. And I feel like if we can do that more as human beings, then this place would be a much, much more loving place. That's for certain.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point, that it does all start from within, and that everything else is a reflection of your own state of being and the way you're interacting and engaging with your environment. I wanted to ask, so marketing, that is something that you're delving deep into at the moment.
To me, marketing is all about values, right? So in today's world, and well, actually, it's been throughout. Marketing is not new. Let's just say that marketing has been around for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. Yeah. Right? First there was ability to communicate to someone else, right? And that's not necessarily bound by words as cavemen or however we came here in the first place, right? We communicated through body language, through actions and through
dance and storytelling.
definitely, right. And then we were able to build a language around our communication, which kind of messed things up in my eyes, because what you say is really only accounting for 3% of actually how you're communicating. It's all built up over body language, tone of voice. The actual words is really the most insignificant part of communicating. Right? It is the emotion that's behind it. It is the tone. It is the way that you're actually communicating in the first place, right? So this whole notion of, and so that all came along. We had stone and tablet, we had paper, we had the newspaper, we had the radio, we had the television, we had the internet, we have AI now, right? All of these are just different tools for us to be able to utilize to really reach a larger audience. That is really the true purpose of how to use these tools. And all these tools are very effective in doing this.
Mediums of communication.
Just vehicles, exactly right. They're just vehicles of communication, right? And so when thinking about, that personal sort of branding, personal marketing side of things, we're doing it every day, right? How you present yourself, how you value yourself as well is really an amplification of how you want to market yourself, I guess, right? If anyone's been in sales, right, everyone would have been told at least once in their lifetime that everything is sales, right? You're constantly selling yourself in every conversation that you have, every interaction that you have, right? Now, to me, that's a bit more of a weird way to say that, but because sales is usually a little bit slimy to think about, right? But it's true. Every interaction that you're having is creating a perception about yourself and the others in the other's mind. And so when talking about marketing, it is really around, one, what is it that you truly value, right? And how do you actually want to communicate the way that you want to be perceived and received in everything that you do, right? These are really things, because in marketing, it is really what you get to control is your communication, really, and how you communicate to people, and how you want people to think and feel when they experience you, your brand, your business, whatever it might be, right? So it is a matter of how you want to be perceived and received in the marketplace, how you actually aligning your business to also embody those values as well. What are you selling? What are your services? Exactly.
What value are you providing?
Exactly.
Yeah.
What is that, and is that also aligned to your values and how you want to be perceived and received first and foremost? And then also the last one is what is your audience's desires? What do they truly desire as human beings, right? This is why, as a marketer, I never ask who's your ideal target audience, because to be honest with you, that is the question that asks the complete opposite to the human desires. When you ask who is your ideal audience, you usually think about a human being that you want to go, it's someone in their 30s, they've got a good income, they've got a household, whatever that might be. To be honest with you, that's important information, but in this bigger scope of conversation around this, what impact do you really want to have on people's lives? It's irrelevant, because if you're not, first of all, tapping into the human desires that drive us every single day.
What are some of those desires?
So, if anyone's heard of Maslow's hierarchy, the 6 human needs, there's many more out there. They're all connecting in pretty much the core ones. So if so one of them being significance, options. I can't quite recall what Maslow's hierarchy is, but significance, options, love and connection, abundance, certainty, contribution, or more ego, I guess is also one. There was also one that Dad created when he had to look at the 6 human needs, which was actually created by Napoleon Hill. If anyone's read Think and Grow Rich, that's a great model that he uses. He did miss one though, which is the need to be right. That is that is one of the core human drivers of a lot of people, a lot of the core human desires of a lot of people, which stems, this judgment, because really the need to be right is just coming from a place of judgment, which I have experienced myself lots and lots of times, right? So it is connecting to these core human desires that we all feel, and how are you actually tapping into that, and is how you're aligning into creating impact for positive change in these different areas. Because if you're not touching on these actual human desires, then you're only basing yourself off the logical side of things and not creating that human emotional connection to people.
So from what I'm taking from that, instead of first focusing on the what and the how of how this is all going to work out and what you're marketing, it's the why. Why are you doing what you're doing? What values are driving or motivating you to pursue what you're wanting to pursue? To come back to your own journey, how did you get to the place that you're in now, where you are looking more inward and a little bit less reactive to everything around you, and embracing the Seb Silanesu experience?
Yeah, the need to be right had a big play in that. This is why I don't believe that there is no such thing as right or wrong, because yes, the need to be right for myself was in a large place of judgment through my own life experiences, which I'll go into, but it has also led me to the point where I'm at today, right? And this is the very cool thing about, yes, we are human beings. We're gonna judge, we're gonna complain, we're gonna love, right? We're gonna hate. This is. You have a look at the conversations they're having all around the world at the moment. Everyone has an opinion, right? Everyone has something that they want to say, and it is such a human thing, and I think it's beautiful, right? Because we do all have something to say. But for me and my journey, like I said, I grew up in a business household, and mum and dad ran the construction company out of the garage. We probably had to move houses around probably 4 or 5 times in 5 years, sort of things, because of the we were renting at the time. Dad was putting in a lot of money into the business to keep it afloat. He started the business in 2008. In the midst of the global financial crisis, right? Now, it probably only hit us really hard in 2010 here, really. But, I grew up with these 2 people in my life who were those risk takers, right? And for Dad, it was really, he actually said this to me just the other day. Longest time he spent in a job was 6 months, right? And I think about myself, and I was like, oh, fuck, I've done the exact same as well, right? Because for him, it was a matter of wanting to do something himself, for him to have, I guess, a level of control over his life. Anyone who goes into business is probably either wanting to go into business for freedom, right? That's really what you hear most and foremost. But and through what I experienced in growing up in that household, and what I've also know a lot about business and people in business, is they come in for freedom and quickly realize that they become their worst bosses. Because in this thing called business, you're trying to build it, you're trying to grow it. As the leader of that company, you tend to go, oh wow, this actually is needing a lot more of my time, a lot more of my energy to grow it, to drive it. And so for Dad, he was working 80-hour weeks, waking up at 4 a.m. in the morning, getting straight to work, doing quotes, whatever it might be, and throughout the day going onto job sites, having client meetings, and then working all the way up to 6 p.m., 7 p.m., 8 p.m., most days, most weekends as well, living that sort of life, but in the pursuit also to provide for his family, That is also another huge driver of people going to business, is to make sure that their families have a roof over their heads, clothes on their backs, and food on the table, sort of thing, right? And he spent 80 hours a week in sacrifice to be able to provide that. But in doing so, he was killing himself doing it, right? Because I believe that you can do anything. You can do anything that you put your mind to, as long as you believe in it. And typically what happens for a lot of business owners is when they get into that state, of constantly working, is you lose connection to why you started in the first place, which is when you start to believe, and when you start to judge, really. This is where that killing yourself over your job, over your business comes through, is not necessarily the amount of hours that you're working, is actually the judgment of the hours, the judgment of how many hours you're working, the judgment, I'm not spending enough time with my family, I'm starting to hate my job, I'm starting to hate my business. I believe that if you just have unconditional love for yourself and in everything that you do, then it no longer becomes sacrifice, but everyone around you actually will start to hold the same value, right? If you want to work 80 hours a week on your business, go for it. I can do it. I mean, if that's what you believe that you want to do and you're so passionate about it, fantastic. Spend as much time as you want in it, but make sure that you don't judge yourself when you find that other people around you may not be as happy as you in doing that, right? There's such a paradox, such a dichotomy around it, right? But it is really, as soon as you start to judge yourself around it, and start to lose that belief, or start to let in that doubt about yourself, that's when things change, right? For the good or for the worse. And for mum and dad, for one of those reasons, of the business turning into more of a chaotic tornado, more so, because of the conditions of the world as well, and also the conditions of the construction industry, in residential especially. It's a tough business to be in, and there was a lot of judgment around it. And for mum and dad, that judgment turned to judgment on each other, and eventually led to a divorce. Now, there wasn't anyone who created it, or it wasn't right or wrong. It just was. And so, growing up in that household, I saw the ups and I saw the downs of what running a business really, really was. When you lose connection to that why, when you lose connection to why you started in the first place, and what impact you really wanted to have on your own life, and also on your audiences, on your customers, on your clients, whatever it might be. So, it was a blessing, because I now hold that in every single conversation I have. When I ask people, why do you sell in the first place, and they go to, to feed my family or to have freedom, I go, great. What does that actually mean? What human desire is that actually fueling for you? For a lot of people, like the ones that I mentioned before, it's either they want to feel significance, they want to have variety in their life, and even that can still be quite surface level. My job as a marketer is to go deep, which is really, unfortunately, what a lot of my counterparts in my industry don't do, is go deep enough into those values, into those emotions, because when you gain true clarity around, and confidence and certainty around those desires, that is when you have the ability to truly have impactful communication, I believe. So it is a matter of really diving deep into the why of everything, and that tends to be who are you? those sort of questions.
I really like that, and coming maybe a little bit of a sidestep from the business and the professional side of things. Any aspect of your life, whether it's exercising, whether it's engaging with friends or trying a new activity, thinking about the why. Why do you do the stuff that you do? And sometimes it's not that deep. Sometimes it's just I really enjoy doing this. But finding out the why behind a lot of things, not just professional relations, is a really good way or compass to navigate to your truth and why you are doing and motivated to do the things that you do.
Yeah, and for a lot of people, it's different, right? But and the language I want to be very, very important on. Whenever someone asks you, why are you doing that? What is your initial emotional reaction whenever someone goes, oh, why did you start a podcast?
To be honest, it's very dependent on the person asking the question, because I don't want to overshare and make people leaving quite bored and unenthused. But yeah, it does depend on the connection I have with the person. If that's a rhetorical question, or is that...
No, like for the purpose of me asking that is for a lot of people when you go, why? Like, and a lot of it can be very judgmental. Why can be a very judgmental question. I believe and it is exactly right, depending on the emotion behind the question. For a lot of people, when they do ask why, it is a judgment. Really, you should just be saying, why the fuck?
Yeah.
You know, it's a lot of that side of things. So it's important to make sure that, you know, when you're asking why, it isn't coming from a place of judgment, but from a place of curiosity, right? There's two very big distinctions in how you actually ask those two questions. Like I said, the words only counted for 3%, or it might be 7% of your overall communication. One person saying why from a place of curiosity compared to one person saying why from a place of judgment will have two very different outcomes on how you answer it, sort of thing, right?
100%. And I think that the intention, like you said, is a big thing in the energy exchange and how that transfer occurs. But in terms of the why for this podcast, I think it probably would seem a bit left of field for a lot of my friends from high school, people and connections I had through university and college, and even on my travels. But I think I've always had a propensity to talk to people. I really enjoy learning through conversation and dialogue, and like you said as well, getting really deep and finding out what makes them tick. Yeah. Not as a means of control or authority, but more so in a sense of being able to empathize and understand what people are going through, because I've only got one perspective of the way a life should be led, I think, but it's an open-ended question. Anyone can live whatever life they want to live. And when I was traveling, I met a lot of really interesting people that had perspectives and outlooks and experiences that were so diverse and so exotic that I was really interested, and I found myself in conversations with people for over an hour, sometimes multiple hours, talking about the most weird and wonderful things. And thinking on that, I was actually with a really good friend of mine from the Netherlands, Bo, and he was saying, you really do listen quite well, but you also have some interesting insight to share. And I think maybe from high school, I was in a fortunate opportunity to be in a leadership role where I was able to be a physical leadership presence. Being in new school and going through the years without any cohorts or year groups above us, you tend to become a very big fish in a very small pond. And that was really good. I don't think it did my ego any wonders, but it was a really great experience. And then going into university, UQ is where I studied, but a campus of 55,000 people, where instead of being one of the most known people in the group, you are just another number. And so going from being a very big fish in a very small pond to being a very small fish in a huge pond was a bit of a shock to my system. And I think getting so used to being the center of attention and in a place and position where I was feeling good about myself and helping the community around me.
How did you feel in that transition? Because I'm sure many people can relate to you on that aspect, right? How did you feel about becoming from that transition?
I felt very lost. And it's going to sound like a weird thing to say and quite ungrateful in nature, but to be able to go to university at all is a huge privilege. To stay at a residential campus, I went to Emmanuel College, is an even greater privilege because you have the fortune of meeting like-minded people and staying in close proximity with them. But what I was finding was during my high school years, I was potentially putting on a mask. I was putting on a mask for good periods of time there. I was being this really outgoing, courageous, confident and loving person. But when I'd get back home, I was not embodying that fully. Anger was something I struggled with. And going into the university setting, being around people constantly, you can't have those two sides to you, or you struggle a little bit to keep the mask in check. And as a result, I found myself almost switching up between these two different sides of myself. One that was really outgoing, very charismatic and caring, which I honestly believe is my true state of being, combined with, we talk about the yin and yang in duality, maybe my more disconnected self, which is all of my insecurities and my fears and my doubts and my judgments that I'm not wanting the world to see. And that sort of imbalance was playing up quite a lot in my head, and I ended up drinking a lot, and it's actually when I first started smoking cigarettes and vapes. Then weed came into the picture after that, but I think I've also got genetics to be predisposed to addictive tendencies, which in of itself is all right, but it is definitely a challenge that I know a lot of people are faced with. Gambling as well, that was a really, really tough time. And it's weird, when you talk about these sort of things, a lot of the time being someone that's addicted to gambling or smoking comes with a lot of judgment from other people. And it is a hard burden to carry if you're not confident in who you are and you're constantly worried about the judgments of others. But I do believe that through self-love and through just continued practice of where you're wanting to be and the life you're wanting to live, you can pursue your better self and maybe step away from those escape mechanisms that are trying to take away from your presence. All they do is drain your bank account firstly, and they just delay the time that it takes you to process what you're feeling. And if I'd known and taken a bit of a step back during that process, I would have definitely said, be kinder to yourself. You're in a very new situation. There's so much happening, so many new people. You're studying at the same time and trying to balance that work-life balance. It was great fun, but I also think there was a period of lostness in my journey. But being able to draw upon those experiences and talk about them, I feel, is a really valuable thing, because it is not easy to be vulnerable on camera or on social media these days, because you are worried that you might say something that'll offend someone or potentially ruin future opportunities with prospective employees or business contracts, whatever it might be. But I think knowing who you are and knowing where you come from, and whilst that it will always be a part of who you are, embodying that, not being ashamed of it. What did you learn from that period? How has it shaped and formed who you are today? Like you said before, if those things didn't happen, we probably wouldn't be here having a conversation. Yeah, so enough with my backstory. We'll go to the actual why then. I realized through a lot of these conversations that I was having with people overseas that I was feeling very uplifted by the knowledge exchange and the energy exchange that was happening, and vice versa with them. They would say time and time again, I'm really uplifted by the conversation you just had. I'm feeling really hope-filled and connected. So the idea behind the podcast and the why is to improve access to a different type of education. And whilst I'm the one that has the judge, jury and executioner role of deciding what eventually gets published, I would like this to migrate to a space where it's a network of people that are all sharing a similar vision and a similar goal of peace, prosperity, connection, and abundance in our world. And yeah, like you said, that being built on values and alignment of values as opposed to the what and the how of what you're doing. And I'm hopeful that with that why behind me, the what and the how will have a way of working themselves out.
Totally, because when you come from those, like get clear on those values and attract those similar people, what you'll actually find is you'll probably attract people who have different thoughts than you, right? This is also what's really important is and where the need to be right comes into play. When someone has a different belief than you, right? Because not everyone believes in the intricacies, at least, of that the different energy fields and that side of things, and I do, but not everyone else does, right? Yeah. What's really important is for that continual awareness of us as human beings comes from the ability to be able to share differences in how we live and experience life, right? That's what I said to you. As a whole, we believe the Earth was flat for a moment there, right? We didn't even have the awareness to know that we were living on an Earth, until someone thought different, until someone thought a very controversial and dividing belief, right? That we are actually on a planet. There's stars out there. Those stars are the suns, are the planets as well, right? That's a huge. Imagine an awareness mindset of a whole world, right? Actually going like, oh shit, we're actually there's more than just what we are like here, sort of thing. There's an outer space, there's solar systems, that type of stuff. Our Earth is round, not flat. It's all, at the end of the day, we only know what we know till someone knows better, right? Or until someone knows different, thinks different, that sort of things. And I encourage, really, I don't want to talk to people who think the same way I think. That's a bit boring, to be honest with you. I want to have, debates and arguments and conversations around different ways of thinking, because, a lot of people go, oh, why would you want to do that? Well, in these conversations I have, there is no judgment. It's only curiosity. It's only curiosity of understanding what you believe, what you value as well, right? Because then through that difference comes growth, comes connection. And a lot of people may be uncomfortable with that, but for me, that's very important.
I think for myself, particularly, as you grow and you expand your own horizon of knowledge, to always come back to being humble and acting with humility is definitely something that for myself I find to be a work in progress.
What does humility mean to you, though? Because this is also what I've experienced, is many people have many different definitions for words, right? Because, what does humility mean to you?
Humility to me is to remind ourselves that we're all human beings, and not to act as if or speak in a manner that can be condescending or judgmental or seem as if you're speaking down to someone else. And whilst I don't embody that all the time, I'll be completely honest with you.
That's fine. It's okay.
It's something that I think is really important, because when you are coming from a lens of humility, you're really just curious. You're wanting to know and understand. You're not bringing power dynamics or hierarchy into play.
In Australia, especially, and I don't think we're unique at all in this aspect, but for Australians, I believe humility has a different definition, right? Because of this thing called the tall poppy syndrome, right?
What's the tall poppy syndrome?
Which I'd love to go into, because the tall poppy syndrome was originated by the first settlers of the British colony when they first came to the land, which was which has now been named Australia. But when they first settled here, the difference of numbers of guards to convicts was around 50 to 1. For every one guard, there was around 50 convicts. That may not be as accurate, but the numbers were quite substantially different, right? Yeah. And so, in a completely new land, when there really isn't many, ways to control a large group of people, right? They had to find the guards, the British people had to find a way to make sure that this mass of convicts, like we're talking about prisoners here, didn't create an outburst, didn't kill them essentially, right? And so what they created was if there was ever one person that stood out of line, that was wanting to create a difference or to revolutionize the place, they wouldn't just punish them, they would punish everyone, right? And this is where the tall poppy syndrome came around, was whenever there was someone that rose too high, they would get cut down and everyone would be punished for it as well, right? So now, a couple hundred years later, that is still very ingrained into how our society operates, is as soon as someone starts to think different, say something different, internally we're all conditioned to go, shut the fuck up, mate, come back down, come back down, they'll hurt us again, please don't, sort of thing. So, but this is because it's from a place of fear, it's from a place of judgment. As the communal benefit, it would be better for us to stay in our comfort zone,
What I just wanted to add a little tidbit I thought was quite interesting. They actually did a lab experiment with 5 monkeys in a room, and they suspended a bunch of bananas from the top, and there was a ladder. And at the start, the monkeys would try and climb the ladder and get to the bananas. And when they did, the scientists would spray the monkeys with a water bottle. And so eventually, over time, the monkeys would stop climbing the ladder to go for the bananas because they were worried about getting sprayed. And then eventually, they would circulate monkeys in and out of the lab area. And eventually, it got to the point where none of the monkeys in the room had ever been sprayed or had even attempted to go up the ladder because there was this fear of getting sprayed, that no one attempted to climb and grab the bananas.
See, humans haven't really evolved that much, to be honest. We have, but instinctively we really haven't. And like I said, it's not unique to Australians. Like this is in every country, in every civilization, because it is for the betterment of the whole. It is for the homeostasis of the whole, right? That's all well and good, but what is important for me is that when someone does think different, we're not stifling that with fear. I want to be able to propel that with curiosity and love for whatever anyone thinks. That is why I believe there is no right or wrong, because people just think different, they act different. Now there's some very extremes you can go with that statement, but also every right thing has led to a wrong thing. Every wrong thing has then led to a right thing. So, is it to judge the wrong that created the right, or is it to judge the right that created the wrong? If that makes sense, yeah. It just is, right? And we learn from it, we feel it, we move on. That is what humans have done forever. And when you think about the definition of humility for a lot of Australians, I believe that a lot of Australians believe that humility is that self-deprecation, right? No one can take praise, right? You tell someone they're awesome, they've done such a good job, or you give them praise. A lot of people find that very uncomfortable here in Australia. They go, oh, fuck off, mate. stop talking, because all you're doing is just bring their awareness to how truly great they are, right? Which a lot of people are very afraid to talk about in this society here. And I believe that definition of, which is why I asked you, what is your definition of humility? Because it is very different. It is very different to many different cultures as well.
So why do you think in this day and age we don't embrace change as much? I think it's definitely gotten much better over time in terms of people being more open and accepting of different belief systems, different ways people can live their life. But what do you think can progress and bridge that gap?
Change is happening every day, every instant, right? We're always changing, and the bridging of the gap, we there's always resistance in change, right? No matter what type of change it is, there will always be resistance, and that resistance comes from the fear of change, the fear of uncertainty, really. It is, oh great, well, what will happen once this change? As a whole world, we all experienced this in 2020 during COVID, right? The whole world changed dramatically, almost overnight, with countries closing their borders and keeping people indoors. Now, this change was also brought with a lot of resistance, but also for a lot of people, I believe it actually deepened connections with and reconnected people to the loved ones in their lives as well, right? And it has completely changed our society in how we operate today. Many jobs are encouraging work from home now, right? Especially in Australia. Now, over in Europe, they've been doing this shit for a long time. This isn't a new concept to them, but for Australians it is, right? So change is constant. Change is almost the only constant in life. Like everything is always changing, and it is really the fear of uncertainty.
Yep.
Right. Now, you can either be fearful of uncertainty or embrace uncertainty. And for me, I want to be able to embrace uncertainty, because with that uncertainty comes new experiences, new emotions, new feelings, just more experience to be able to feel deeply, right?
Yep.
Like, to be honest with you, yes, it would be great to know how the rest of my life pans out, but no one knows that. Certainty, like if you actually think about certainty, there is no certainty. The only thing that is certain in our lives is death.
Is that we're going to pass away at some point.
Right, yes. And the only things that we can control in our lives is our thoughts, emotions, and actions. Those are the only things we can control. And guess what? All those things are internal, right? We can have some influence on other people through how we, act, think, communicate, feel. But really, the idea of certainty is a figment of our imagination. Everything that we do is uncertain. Every next second is uncertain. Every next day is uncertain. No one knows what is going to happen tomorrow, right?
And I think that's a large part, in particular, I think how the Western world operates. The desire to have a home, a good education, food on the table, the basics, necessities of life comes from that sense of certainty, feeling safe and secure. Your family is nourished, well looked after and out of harm's way. And depending on circumstance, not everyone might be in a position to take risk, but even tomorrow, like you said, is not guaranteed. So embrace the uncertainty.
Embrace the uncertainty, because guess what? You're already doing it. Right? You may think
like
you may think that you have some control over what's going to happen tomorrow, but to be honest with you, you don't.
So that's actually something I'd like to quickly expand on. And apologies to the audience that think this is a bit tiresome, but do you think that we have divine orchestration, that there's some higher power that's directing the course of our lives, or do you think it is all just random and...
Yeah, good question. I don't know. I don't know, right? I don't know.
There's no one truth. What's your truth?
I believe that here's what I feel that I know or I believe, and this ties into what I was talking about before around that unconditional love. I believe that we are unconditional love, right? When we first enter this realm, this dimension, whatever you want to call it, and that the purpose of us being here is to feel something different than just unconditional love, right? This is why I value and I desire different experiences to feel all the range of emotion, right? Because I believe that we did come to this earth many times, right? And I believe in that notion of reincarnation, right? And that every new, or just the next life that we live is just another way to experience something different, right? Or to experience the whole range of humanity, sort of thing. So the aspect of, you know, your life is planned and that side of things, I believe that there is some sort of divine intervention, but I also believe that we are that divine intervention as well. You know, as the individuals, we are the embodiment of that divine, whatever that divinity may be, right? Whatever you believe. You know, they say in the Bible that man was created in the image of God. And my interpretation of that is that we are God, right? If we're created in the image of God, and we are God. And I think a great example of that was Jesus Christ. He was an example, and there have been many after, you know.
Many different prophets.
Exactly.
And
saints, whatever you want to call them, right?
Yep. Teachers and storytellers.
Leaders of the world,
Yep.
right? And you can usually pick who those people are because they are usually the ones that have been killed, right? This is why I say tall poppy syndrome is not unique to Australia, because whenever someone is preaching something different or something that is aligned to showing people that we are powerful beyond measure, right? And that there is no purpose in playing small, thinking small, judging yourself, because we are powerful beyond measure and we can create anything that we want. For a lot of people, you know, Martin Luther King, Jesus Christ, a lot of other people, right, throughout history, Gandhi, right, a lot of these leaders, Mother Teresa. She obviously wasn't killed, but, you know, another example of someone who experienced great scrutiny in their lives as well from other people, but lived a larger purpose, I guess you could say. You know, these are human beings that really preach that message that you are powerful beyond measure in that side of things, right? And really had no judgment in what they did as well. So in regards to that divine intervention, I believe that we are that embodiment of divinity. And so tapping into that source, whatever you want to call it, is really just us tapping into our true selves, whatever that might be, you know, of who we are, who we were before we were born, you know. I believe, and that's why I believe in that reincarnation, that each time that we come back, it is just to experience a new experience, to feel something, and whether that's to reach a point of enlightenment or whatever it might be. I don't believe enlightenment is a final destination. Throughout everyone's lives, we experience enlightenment, we embody enlightenment, but then we do go back into that fear mindset, that judgment mindset, and it's kind of a bit of like an infinity symbol, you know. The enlightenment is the center, but then we're constantly going through it, going out of it, going through it, going out of it. So I feel, in my definition of enlightenment is that unconditional love, right? Is not judging the bad, the good, the wrong, the right, the anger, the sadness, the happiness, the joy. Enlightenment is just the acceptance of everything. Really, right? So
That's, yeah, really good insight. Talking to a lot of people, actually, the whole idea of just letting go, detachment, and I don't mean foregoing responsibilities or common human decency, but not being as attached to physical things or your material things or the human nature things, just experiencing things as they come and letting go.
a lot of people think that as well as being numb, right? So if you are to just accept everything, then you go, well, doesn't that mean you're just numb? So you don't feel anything? No, it's actually the opposite. You feel everything, right? Without judgment, and just accept it as this is just another motion. This is just another thought. It will come, it will go, right? And the acceptance of that is what I believe is that true enlightenment, right? And just to know there will come, it will go, and is it actually real, right?
Yeah.
Really.
I wanted to talk about, in your experience, there's, like every experience, been some ups and downs. You talk about mental health and the importance of being in a place of good mental health. What is mental health to you, and how do you keep in touch with how you're tracking mentally, how you're nurturing your mind, body, and spirit on the day-to-day basis?
Yeah. Now, I haven't had any personal experience with I guess, because when you typically talk about mental health, a lot of people think about mental illness, right? And a lot of people prioritize mental health out of the fear of becoming mentally ill, right? Which I believe is a form of mental illness in itself as well, right? So but the actual mental health, to me, is a fundamentally flawed concept, right? If you talk about mind, body, and soul, mental health, what is it focusing on?
It's your mind.
Your mind, exactly right. I believe that your mind plays a very important role in the mind-body-soul connection, but it isn't everything. Whereas when a lot of people think about mental health, it's only focusing on the mental, right? And where I believe that connection to that source is in alignment to everything, right? So yes, mental health is important, and for me, that mental health is focused more on the thoughts that we think, right? So for me, and in my journey of that need to be right, I would believe my thoughts were real, right? I would believe my thought of I'm not good enough, my doubt for myself were real, and so I would feel that as well. Your thoughts are your gateway to your emotions, right? And your thoughts are the things that create your emotions as well, right? So if you want to change the way that you feel, right? If you want to change, if you don't want to be sad anymore, and you want to go, well, I'd like to be happy, then what is the thought process that created that sadness? What is the thought process that created that happiness? Now, it's not to judge anything, but it's to now become aware of what is that thought. Now, I think on average the human being has 60,000 different thoughts a day. So, anyone trying to keep track of every single one of their thoughts, fucking good luck to you, right? Because a lot of these thoughts as well aren't conscious, right? These are a lot of unconscious things that are going on in our mind as well. But if you're wanting to feel something different, understand what is the thought process that created that feeling. And for me, in my journey, that thought of I need to be right, was when I was in that space, it was creating a lot of, which a lot of people would call either that depression or, it was creating that sadness, anger, because fuck you, I'm right. You know, there was a lot of judgment in it, right? So what I really became aware of was that those thoughts aren't real. That need to be right isn't real. There's a purpose for it all, but you know, when I would find myself, you know, in doubt of myself, and believing that I'm not enough, I'm not worthy enough, I'm not good enough, whatever it might be, whatever your word is in front of that I'm not enough, right? It's not real, because those thoughts they're passing by, and they're you know, a lot of people believe that they're cred by your ego, right? Which is why a lot of people believe that ego isn't a good thing, but also your ego is a great creator. You know, for human beings, a lot of the advancement in creation, I believe that humanity has been able to achieve is through the ego. And what I believe ego is just the knowing of yourself, right? Now you can either have that in a negative manipulative way, or you can have that in an abundance creation, you know, energy. Really, it's the two streams of energy that you're putting into your ego, right? And one is fueled by fear and I'm not enough, and one is fueled by I am enough and I always will be enough. Love, that side of things, right? So, what were we talking about?
To be honest, I've lost the train of thought. I was just so engrossed in what was being said. That's all right. We'll bring it back. So that was really cool to understand a bit more of your why. How are you finding in your current capacity, in your networking group in BNI and your own entrepreneurial ventures? Would you be able to speak a little bit about your journey in entrepreneurship and now with mentors and the importance of mentors in your personal progression?
Like I was talking about before, the importance of mentors is the ability to access that information. You know, for universities, the model of universities is pretty much mentorship, right? You pay to be in front of a expert in a field, and to be mentored by them, tutored by them, lectured by them, sort of thing, right? So I believe that, you know, you can find that anywhere. And I also believe that it's important to seek different mentors with different beliefs, different mindsets, different thoughts, that side of things. Because in my journey in it all, in my journey of business, in my journey of entrepreneurship, and what I'm going through still currently is finding your own path throughout that all, right? It's very important to seek new information, to seek new mentors, but it's also important to find yourself in that as well. And for myself, it was very easy for me to go down the path of once again, that need to be right. Of going, oh, well, this is what this mentor told me, so that's now what I'm going to embody. You know, it was really a loss of, it felt more lost than anything, because I was, you know, this is where also the self-development, you know, books come in, you know, all these different books of people, you know, of you improving yourself, that type of stuff, all well and good, but also to know that, you know, these are just people's opinions, this is just people's way of living, and it's important to find your own journey, your own path in it all, for you to, I guess, have your own method in it all as well, to create that for yourself, right? And not to just copy, I guess, which is what I believe, unfortunately, is what the traditional pathway of education is creating, is more just people copying what's already been done, which is where a lack of innovation comes into play for me. And now it's not in every aspect, in the way that business is taught in university. It's really just a matter of fucking pumping out robots to work in larger corporations, right? It's just a factory of copying.
Yeah. Just to touch on that, I suppose, with my own personal experience, you talk about mentors and the importance of having that sort of positive role model to look to and sort of seek professional advice, life advice, lived experience from. And bringing it back to the why of this, I'm sure there'll be many people that say, like, why is this guy trying to be Gandhi or Nelson Mandela or whatever? But to be honest, my role models in a lot of that sort of self-help discovery and personal development journey, and I think even myself getting caught in the trap of not pretending to be them, but acting out of accordance with who I am to try and live out their values. And instead what I've found is align with the values of the person, their why, and then that will reinform and shape your how, because no one else can be Nelson Mandela. No one else has experienced what it's like to be in prison for 27 years and to fight against oppression and division in such a divided country. But to look at his perseverance, his dedication, his love for his country, the love for his people, and the celebration of diversity and the importance of being able to forgive and move past things in the hope and the desire for a better and more unified future. So yeah,
That is the power of all these different stories, right? The autobiographies, like I love all the movies as well about the great business people and that type of stuff, right? They're always very entertaining and fun to watch, but the power of all these different stories of the greatest leaders in the world and that type of thing is because we see ourselves in them, right? And that is what I encourage people to resonate on is what is it that you see in them that you see in yourself? Because I believe that we are our own greatest mentors, right? We're the people that know ourselves the most intimately, right? And we're always the one there for ourselves all the time. So yes, the external seeking of knowledge and information, I believe, is important, but I also believe that we already have that within ourselves internally, right? It's important to seek out, support, and to talk to people as well. Now, in my own journey, I believe that I had all the answers, in regards to that need to be right. So I wouldn't communicate with anyone. I wouldn't talk to anyone about my vision, my desires, my own beliefs. And so in doing so, that shut out a lot of people that were very close to me, which for me was okay, because I knew that I was okay with myself, but also what I found was it was really actually coming from a place of fear, because I was also fear of criticism and loss of love from the people closest to me. And I believe that if I was to share my difference with them, it would bring about that loss of love, criticism, and just actually confirm that already thought I had in myself of that I'm not enough, right? And all of that was just really bullshit, It was just all in my head. But this is where these books, these stories can really hold value, is showing you a different way to think, that there is different options out there,
well, that's it, and that there is so much potential with how life can pan out, and really the only limitations that one has in their lifetime is the limitations that you restrict yourself to in thought.
I believe that, yes, taking risks is important, but really what that taking risk means to me is to find new ways to expand your comfort zone, really, to go outside your comfort zone and to learn and experience new things about yourself, really. I believe that really is the journey of self-discovery. And so that is what without judgment, really. And the thing that I always come back to is the Marianne Williamson poem, right? That our deepest fear isn't that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that frightens us the most. Like it is, if anyone really is interested or curious about their own journey in self-discovery, read that poem, right? Marianne Williamson, Our Deepest Fear. Read that poem, because it is one of the most powerful things you'll ever read, and it is really that journey of what life is about for me, is actually understanding, having some awareness around, that we are powerful beyond measure, and there is no purpose in playing small. There is no purpose in playing small, because as soon as you are liberated from your own fear, you unconsciously liberate others. You unconsciously give people permission to do the same. And it is all comes from internal. And all these great stories from these leaders are just stories that embody exactly that, right? They all went through the arc of the I'm not enough. I'm going through some uncertainty. I'm going through some places of uncomfortability. But in all of that, they stayed disciplined in the connection to their values, right? So first and foremost, getting that clarity and understanding of what those values are to you, and what they actually mean to you as well. Because you could value humility, you could value, love, whatever it might be, but understand that if you were challenged on that, be disciplined in always remaining curious, right? Be disciplined in removing judgment. Now, you will experience judgment, you will think judgmental thoughts, but be disciplined in understanding that they're just thoughts, and they're not real, right? Because that is really the key to, if you talk about mental health as well, right? That is the key to understanding the difference between, getting yourself out of a sad or depressed state. Is just understanding that those thoughts are not real, right? And it's a matter of keeping yourself, I guess, taking some responsibility and telling your 100% truth in everything that you do. Now, that may ruffle some feathers, that may make some other people uncomfortable, but to be honest with you, if you're experiencing that in other people, it's because you believe that for yourself, right? So yeah, always that's probably one of the best places to end on is that we are powerful beyond measure, and for anyone who does believe they are not enough, read that poem, because it will give you some great insight into in how we all play a small game, right? And how there is no purpose in it. So yeah, that's a good way to end it.
Seb, thank you so much for your time today. As always, it's a pleasure to explore and unpack your perspective and lens on the world a little bit more.
Yeah.
And to the viewership, I hope there was something positive or beneficial that you could take away from that conversation, a seed or multiple seeds that you can plant in your garden. So continue being the best and most authentic version of yourself. And thank you for listening.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you so much for tuning into that conversation with Sebastian. I've had the pleasure of knowing Seb for a very long time. And actually, he was one of my very first friends when I moved over from South Africa. He continues to play a very important role in my own personal development and serves as a reminder that friendship is worth its weight in gold. From that conversation, I believe there were plenty of seeds that were planted in my garden, and I hope it's the same for you. What I found to be most interesting was the notion of tall poppy syndrome, and how by standing out from the rest, it's very easy for others to judge and try and bring you back down. But more often than not, that's coming from a place of fear and uncertainty and worry and concern for you. I take a lot of courage, actually, and inspiration from Seb's decision to pursue his own path. particularly at such a young age. I can only imagine how much judgment and ridicule that decision would have been faced with. However, it's led him to where he is now, and hopefully that can be a testament to what can happen when you step out of your comfort zone and embrace the uncertainty. Like he said, we're already doing that anyway, so why not pursue what you really want to pursue? I understand that that conversation could be quite disenchanting for some. Being two very young males, it's quite hard to understand what value or outlook that we might have to offer that's beneficial to someone who's had much more lived experience. But I do believe that age is just a number, and everyone has the capacity to do and pursue what they want to do. So, the idea behind this conversation was that through unconditional love for yourself and for others, as well as maintaining a mindset of curiosity, you can pursue anything. You shift the limitations and restrictions from societal expectations and self doubts to an infinite array of possibility. Obviously, there's physical limitations. I'm not saying anyone can fly, but you can pursue what you really want to pursue. And it's a matter of letting go of that fear and judgment of yourself and that need to be right and giving it a go. And if anyone was interested in reaching out for future conversations or to ask any questions, you can find the avenues of connection down below. Thank you, and I'll see you next time.